Hi, everybody. Welcome to Hey Doc, What's New in Plant-Based Medicine? I'm your host, Lisa Carlin, and I'm so excited to have the Director of Clinical Research for my favorite organization in the whole world, the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. Let me introduce you to Dr. Hana Kahleova. Dr. Kahleova, how are you today?
Thank you, Lisa. Doing well. How about you?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to do this show with you. So my first question all the time is, hey doc, what's new in plant-based medicine? So let me know. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, what a great question to start. So yesterday we published a new paper that most of you will find really exciting. It's on plant-based diets for healthy aging. And it was published in the American Journal of the College of Nutrition. And it just highlights the importance of diet for healthy aging. It shows how much can be achieved in only a few decades. For example, you probably know the concept of blue zones, where people live the longest on Earth. One of them is in Loma Linda, California. So the Seventh-day Adventists have many valuable lessons for us, which we can learn. Their diet is very much plant-based compared to non-Adventist population in the US. Another blue zone is in Japan, in Okinawa. And in fact, Okinawa had a profound effect on Japan. In Okinawa, 50% of the daily caloric intake comes from sweet potatoes. And the fat content of the diet is super low, about 6% of all calories. And they eat a lot of soy products, a lot of rice, a lot of green leafy vegetables. And once Japan started learning these lessons from Okinawa, they started implementing it into their healthcare system. And that was early in the 20th century, in the first half of the 20th century, where the life expectancy in Japan was super low, one of the poorest outcomes in the whole world. And within a few decades, after incorporating all these lessons from Okinawa, Japan is now the leader and has one of the highest life expectancies in the world. So it's really inspiring how much can be done if we really implement this knowledge. So I would like to encourage all of you to read the paper. It's short, it's just a perspective, and it just summarizes how much can be achieved through a plant-based diet for healthy aging.
So here's the paper right now, and there is a link, and I'm going to put that link into the comments. I will do that as we're going. I'll put the link into the comments, and then I'll let everybody either on Facebook or on YouTube, we'll be able to see the link in the comments there as well. So we'll do that. But that's great. And I was going to point out, this is a very high starchy carbohydrate diet. So what do you have to say for all those people that say, I don't eat carbs, or I'm just afraid of carbs? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Exactly. That's one of the wonderful lessons. Sometimes people are afraid of carbs for their weight management. But in fact, people who eat a plant-based diet that's high in carbs have a better body weight management compared with people whose diet is higher in fat. So that's one of the major myths that holds back people from eating more carbohydrates. And of course, there's, carbohydrates are not equal. There are carbohydrates that are complex and super healthy for you, that are in whole food, that are in a whole foods plant-based diet, like in whole grains and legumes and vegetables and fruits. And there's carbohydrates that have been already processed in white bread and white rice. So you want to be careful with those, of course. But carbohydrates in general, if they come from a whole foods plant-based diet, are nothing to fear about. In fact, they're one of the healthiest sources of fiber. And fiber by itself has been shown to reduce all-cause mortality by 15% in general population. So eating fiber by itself is beneficial, and the foods that are rich in fiber are usually also pretty high in carbohydrates.
So what kind of foods would be eating fiber by itself? Are you talking about the fiber supplements, or are you talking about eating high fiber foods?
High fiber foods.
Yes, the high fiber foods. I know it also increases bulk in your excrement to try to be sensitive to this. And in the patients that I've taken care of over the last 10 years or so, constipation just goes away.
Right.
So when someone says they're constipated, they're basically telling you, I'm not eating enough fiber in my diet and everything is too processed. So potatoes and whole grain rice and grains are wonderful starchy carbs, and they also fill you up. They do that as well. Okay, so let's start off with the beginning of our talk. And you are the director of clinical research, and I've known you always doing so many research projects and publishing so many articles. And this is your introductory slide. Can our meaning Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine's research help change the world? And I can say it's already changing the world. I can see that now from the people that have gone through your program at the Barnard Medical Center. You now have a weight loss program that Dr. Vinita Raman is doing, and you are going to talk a little bit about weight loss and diet, obesity, and you're going to talk a little bit about rheumatoid arthritis. But let's go on to your next slide and tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lisa, for your kind words. I mean, it's amazing what a plant-based diet can do for people, who've been struggling with their health for so long. So it's not only about healthy aging, it's about particular health conditions, such as body weight regulation. It can give hope to people who've been struggling with being overweight for their whole life. It can be useful for people with autoimmune disease, such as rheumatoid arthritis, for people with cardiovascular disease, for cancer. And if you see how lives are being changed, it'll really, charge you up. It'll really inspire you. So let's start with the autoimmune diseases. One of them is rheumatoid arthritis, which is a very painful condition. It's a disease that affects your joints, and they're painful, swollen, and the motion is also limited. And it may be a debilitating disease in the long term. So sometimes people with rheumatoid arthritis end up in a wheelchair. But does it have to be that way? Do they have to end up like this? That's why we're conducting a study for people with rheumatoid arthritis, and we are putting them on a plant-based diet. And although the study is still ongoing, I would like to share with you one story of one of our research study participants, and that's Jane. When Jane joined our study, she was a little bit overweight. Her body mass index was 25.5. You may recall that the normal body mass index is up to 25. So just slightly overweight. She had an active rheumatoid arthritis, so her joints were really painful. And she also had an elevated cholesterol, more than 200 milligrams per deciliter. And what were her outcomes after 16 weeks on a plant-based diet? So first of all, her body weight changed. She lost a significant amount of weight. She lost 15 pounds. So she looked really amazing after the 16 weeks of a plant-based diet. Her cholesterol completely normalized. It went down by 20 milligrams per deciliter. And the activity of her rheumatoid arthritis also went down significantly. And I would like you to listen to Jane as she describes the changes that took place herself in a video.
the symptoms of my RA issues went away completely. Yeah, the aches in my shoulders are gone. I used to have them every night, or in fact, all of my body ached at night, always. And the tops of my feet in the last year have been hurting every night, seriously hurting. It was hard to lay a blanket on top of my feet sometimes. That's gone. And it happened immediately. My attitude has changed about food in general. I'm grateful to fill my belly. And I've also learned that food has flavor. Plain food does have flavor by itself. I'll give you an example. Butternut squash baked. On top of that, I put some seasoned lentils. And that's it. It was delicious. It was filling, and it was extremely plain. My success in treating the rheumatoid arthritis has been just happy, astonishing how greatly food affects my health and my disease. I had no idea. My rheumatologist sent me here, and he's going to be very happy to learn that I did this experiment. I'm the only patient who's doing that. So it's going to be a fun report.
How inspiring is that?
Getting rid of your pain. Can you imagine the change in the quality of your life if you're not experiencing pain anymore? How much fun you can have, what you can do with your life.
You give them their life back. And it seems to me that I'm reading more and more of scientific studies about the impact of a whole food plant-based diet on other autoimmune diseases as well. So it seems, do you think it's the reduction in inflammation that is the major part, or what do you think is the major component? It's probably a symphony of components, but what do you think the primary components are that reduces inflammation? And by the way, I have to say that my mother suffered from rheumatoid arthritis, and all the medical care that she received was absolutely wrong. It was the care of 40 years ago, which was to eat meat and to eat dairy products, and there was no whole food plant-based. And she also had ulcerative colitis, so she was told to never eat fiber. So everything she ate made her worse. And that's one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about what I'm doing and bringing you on this show so that you can tell the world about the impact of a whole food plant-based diet, at least now, on rheumatoid arthritis.
Yeah, I mean, it's a symphony of different compounds in a plant-based diet that make it anti-inflammatory. It has been shown that plant-based diets are anti-inflammatory compared with non-vegan diets. But it's also about removing dairy for autoimmune disease. That seems to be crucial. Dairy may be the trigger for the autoimmune diseases. So once we remove dairy, it helps our immune system not to be confused, not to react and overreact to some of the antigens in our diet. So it has two components: removing the animal products that are too stimulating for the immune system and may be confusing. And the second part is about providing the right nutrients for our immune system and all the antioxidants and all the anti-inflammatory compounds
that are not found in animal flesh.
Yeah, exactly.
At all. So tell us about some of the other studies that you're doing and other hospital work that you're doing at the Physicians Committee.
Yeah, right now we are conducting some hospital studies. One of them is at Sibley Hospital, and we provide lunch and learn sessions for the employees at Sibley Hospital. Normally we do them in person. However, due to COVID-19, we had to switch to the Zoom platform. But still, these Sibley Hospital employees join us for a Zoom session on Friday at noon. So we just finished one session right now. It's a 12-week program where they try out a plant-based diet for improvements in their health. And we're tracking their body weight and their blood lipids and their glycemic control and their blood pressure. And as you may know, healthcare workers are at a higher risk of cardiovascular disease than regular population. So it's particularly important for this this population to do changes in their diet, and that's exactly what we're doing.
That's wonderful. Tell me some of the when you have a classroom of students, how many students would there be in a class?
So we try to keep our classes fairly small, somewhere between 10 and 15 people.
Okay.
So because it's not only a class where we give them lecture, it's a class where they share their successes and challenges from the last week, and we need to have an opportunity to really, get them to know them better and work with them individually.
And I think when I teach the food, because I'm a Food for Life instructor, a certified Food for Life instructor with the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. And one of the things that I've discovered is in the beginning of the class, if we begin to share who's had some changes, if someone has not quite bought into this and they're sort of dipping their toe in, but they haven't jumped in yet, and then they hear other classmates talk about their successes, it really motivates them to say, well, if they can do it, maybe I can do it too. So it becomes a very powerful way of getting people to share their experiences. And,
yeah, super inspiring. And let's say if we have a weight loss study and someone is struggling with losing their weight and another participant is super successful, they can not only share how much they lost over the last week, but also they can share their recipes. They can say, well, this has been really working for me. Eating a lot of beans and greens is a strategy for me that works. And, so people inspire each other also. It's not only about us giving them a lecture. It's about sharing the experience that makes it so much fun.
And for people that don't know, if they go to the website, PCRM is the acronym for Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, and they put in Food for Life instructors, there's a list of all the instructors in the United States, and I think in the UK, there may be some other instructors in foreign countries as well. But so if you are interested, if any of our listeners is interested or knows someone who may want to try this program, it's people are doing it. Now we're doing it virtually because of COVID, but you can find an instructor probably close to where you are. And now since it's virtual, it's really not a barrier if someone doesn't live in the same city that we live in. So let's talk a little bit about eggs and eggs raising your cholesterol, because there's so much controversy about saturated fat, and if saturated fat really is as bad as some of the studies say it is. Certainly the high protein keto paleo people are promoting the consumption of eggs. What is your opinion on the impact of eggs and cholesterol? And can you talk a little bit about, should we be eating egg whites? Because people ask me that question all the time.
Right. This is such an excellent question, Lisa, and so important for our health. Many articles have questioned the importance of removing your eggs from the diet, and have questioned their ability to raise your cholesterol. And that's exactly why we're doing a study where we are looking at the consumption of egg yolks and their ability to raise cholesterol. And in fact, egg yolks don't contain only cholesterol, they contain also saturated fat. And a week ago, a Cochrane review was published,
yes,
showing that reducing your saturated fat intake may reduce your cardiovascular risk by 21%. And this can be achieved by substituting saturated fat in your diets through either complex carbohydrates or polyunsaturated fats found in seeds and in nuts. So it's really something, reducing your cardiovascular risk by 21% is a substantial change by only reducing your saturated fat intake.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Cochrane Library, the Cochrane Review, for those of us that aren't in science? I know it is the pinnacle of success if you are lucky enough to have one of your research articles reviewed by the Cochrane Library, the Cochrane Review. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of studies that come out of that entity?
Absolutely. Cochrane is just like a gold standard for publishing in science. And the authors analyzed the data from 15 studies from about 59,000 participants. So, it's a large review, a lot of work that the researchers have done. And so this conclusion is really solid. It's science-based, it's evidence-based. That's exactly what we want for our life, right? Like if you're making a decision, should I eat eggs or should I not? You want the evidence to be solid. You don't want to base your decision just on, something your neighbor tells you, or, you want the evidence to be solid. And that's exactly what this
And what I try to teach people is to look at who funded the study. Now, in that Cochrane article on saturated fat, do you happen to know if there was any industry funding?
I have it in front of me, and I don't see any conflict of interest.
And that's my understanding of why that was such an incredible article, because
right.
when your research is funded by the dairy industry or someone in the animal agriculture industry or the beef cattlemen's association, these entities are not going to allow researchers to put out research that says eating red meat is bad. They're never going to fund a study like that. They already know what the outcomes are going to be. And I was having an argument with somebody on Instagram the other day who was about this particular article. And I was saying this is the gold standard. And the guy said to me, well, you got to read this article. And I did. And it was funded by, it was animal agriculture. In fact, it wasn't 8 of the 12 researchers were all in the animal agriculture business. And if you, as a researcher, begin to take money, and you've never done this, but if you begin to take money from the animal agriculture industry, what does that do to your reputation if you then want to do another study that is completely plant-based where you're not taking money from that? Is there like a political thing that goes on that once you are publishing and you're funded by, say you're doing dairy industry type of research, can you step away from that? Is that possible, or are you pretty much pigeon-toed into that type of research?
It is possible to step away from it, but people will look up your past conflict of interest from the past research studies and will be asking you about it, like if it's still current. So it's definitely a good idea not to be biased, not to have any conflict of interest, because it's challenging to show that you don't have any agenda
right
to this research.
Right. And we learn this when the Food for Life instructors come to the International Congress on Nutrition and Medicine. We usually have a single day that's devoted just to us, and we're taught all kinds of ways of improving our ability to look at data and assess whether it's credible or not. Mm-hmm. And so often when I have discussions with people, it's always about they're promoting something they heard. It was said by someone, maybe like Joe Rogan, that they enjoy listening to. And then when you dig in and you look at who funded it, it's funded by industry. So who funds the article? Who funds the research at Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine? Where does that money come from?
The Physicians Committee doesn't accept any money from any industry to fund our research. We apply for different grants, and our donors have the opportunity to support us. So if you're interested in supporting our research, you can do it on our website. Just click pcrm.org and click on donate, and you can support our research that way. So that means we don't accept any money from
industry,
any industry.
But I've read articles where your funding has come from the National Institute of Health. Now, that's not the animal agriculture industry. That's the government. So that's really where the money should come for science. And that's where Physicians Committee gets their money. So we can feel pretty confident that there aren't outcomes because of who your funding was. We see that in media all the time. I mean, what we want to put on, if we want to put something on television, if the sponsors are the pharmaceutical industry that is pushing cardiovascular medication or medication for autoimmune disease or medication for hypertension or certainly erectile dysfunction, they don't want our shows. They don't want to see anything from us because we're saying, look, you can reverse all these things with a whole food plant-based diet. Doesn't mean medicine is never indicated, but you want to start with the food first and then see where you wind up. And then physicians will make a clinical decision on whether or not they're going to introduce medication. Okay, let's go on to our next slide, and we're going to start talking about obesity. And then I think you have another case study that we're going to talk about. So let's talk about overweight or obese in America, and what does that mean?
3 out of 4 men and 2 out of 3 women in the United States are overweight or obese. And what's the solution for this obesity epidemic? Obviously, we need to improve our standard American diet. And one of the ways, or one of the diets that has been recommended is the Mediterranean diet. That is very much plant-based. It emphasizes the consumption of fruits and vegetables and whole grains and legumes. But it also includes low-fat dairy, it includes fish, and it contains a lot of olive oil, 4 tablespoons a day in the PREDIMED study. And that's why we decided to compare a Mediterranean diet with a low-fat vegan diet head-to-head in a study. Each of the interventions lasted 16 weeks. So please click on the next slide, Lisa.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So one group started with the Mediterranean diet for 16 weeks and then switched over to a low-fat vegan diet, while the other group, started with the opposite. And I'm not able to share all the results with you today, but I'd like to share with you a story of one of the study participants, Kimberly. So Kimberly, when she joined the study, was in the obese range. Her body mass index was 35.9. Her cholesterol was really elevated, 233, and her fasting plasma glucose was actually in the diabetic range. What were her outcomes after 16 weeks on a plant-based diet compared to a Mediterranean? Please, next slide. Her body weight dropped by 28 pounds on the vegan diet, but she gained 9 pounds back on the Mediterranean. This might be due to the fairly high amount of fat in the Mediterranean diet. So Kimberly just couldn't wait for the Mediterranean diet to be over so that she could go back to her vegan diet. Her cholesterol dropped significantly on the vegan diet, but went up again on the Mediterranean, and the same for her fasting plasma glucose. So her blood sugar went down all the way to the normal range on the vegan diet, but went up again on the Mediterranean. And let's have Kimberly describe the changes to you directly in a video.
This program was 9 months long. And as I was walking in today, I realized it's 9 months. I don't have anything else to do on a Wednesday night now, except maybe drink mojitos. But just the fact that I can be compliant to something that drastically changes my life for the better shows me that I can adopt a lifestyle that is healthy. At the end of the vegan diet, I had lost about 30 pounds. I'm sorry, I lost about 30 pounds. All of my lab work returned to normal limits. We couldn't even find a high limit in my lab work. During the Mediterranean process, I gained 7 pounds and my lab work returned to the original labs that I had before I started the program. So my experience as a whole throughout the whole process was amazing. I mean, the Barnard group is wonderful. The support that they give you, the fact that they are there to answer phone calls, emails, any questions that you may have, and that's everyone on the staff, to include Dr. Barnard. So it was all just an amazing journey, and I'm so glad that I was able to be a part of it. This program was 9 months.
Oops, there we go. What an inspirational story again. And you just see how, I think it's so interesting. And just to review for people, let's just take them through this one more time. This was what's called a crossover study. So let's look at this one more time. So I want to make sure people got that. So can you just go over this briefly one more time for anybody that might have missed it? Because I think
Absolutely, Lisa. So a crossover study means that each participant goes through both diets. So one group started with a Mediterranean diet for 16 weeks, and then they switched over to a plant-based diet for 16 weeks. The other group started with a low-fat vegan diet, and then they switched over to the Mediterranean diet. So each participant, tried out both diets, which enabled us to compare both diets against each other for each participant individually, and then for the whole study group.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification, because that went by rather quickly. It's a complicated strategy to implement, and especially when people like one diet and may not like the other, as you were saying, Kimberly, couldn't wait to get back onto the vegan diet. Mm-hmm. I think that's wonderful. And then you actually can see, because there's so much research on the Mediterranean diet. And if you didn't have the vegan diet, then maybe the Mediterranean diet would be the best diet there, but out there. But now that you can compare head to head and do this crossover study, it should become very clear to people that really the Mediterranean diet is not getting patients to where they need to be. It's not the ultimate. It's getting them somewhere partway, but who wants to be the B- student? We want to be the A student, right?
Yeah, exactly. And stay tuned. I'll be sharing the results from this study at the ICNM conference in a few weeks.
Oh, that's wonderful. We'll talk about that. So let's just, I guess this is the ending slide. We still have more to come, but this is your ending slide of really changing the world for a better place.
Exactly.
Make any comments about looking at veganism on a much more global level as it affects the planet and as it affects the animals?
Exactly. By changing the lives of people and by removing animals from the plates, we change the whole planet for the better. And we can, we can do it one person at a time, and that still counts. So our research is really changing the world one person at a time, or one study participant at a time. And the participants not only change their own diet, but they also influence their families and friends. We have so many inspiring stories, like how much influential the research studies have been in people's lives. So I'm super grateful that we're able to contribute and change the lives of people for the better and contribute to the well-being of the animals and the environment.
Because it's all connected.
Yes.
It's all connected. So now there's going to be a conference. Physicians Committee has an annual conference. I've attended every year since 2012. This is the first year that I will not be physically in Washington, D.C., but I will be attending virtually. And I'm looking forward to this conference. Can you tell us a little bit about the conference and what's going to be different this year about it?
So the International Conference on Nutrition and Medicine is a wonderful event where we have about 1,000 people coming in. This year it's going to be virtual, so you can register and log in from anywhere in the world. And, we just line up an excellent selection of speakers. All the lectures are super inspiring. So if you like to be up to date in the research on plant-based nutrition, this is exactly the place to be at. It'll be in the beginning of August, and it'll be for only a few hours a day. It's completely doable, and it's so much worth the time investment on your part. You will be excited about all the lectures and all the speakers. I'm personally looking forward to the lecture of Dr. Gary Fraser from Loma Linda University. He's coming from one of the blue zones, but he's not coming from like an Oriental country or some country where we would be wondering, what are they doing? Is it even applicable to us? He's coming from California. He's coming, from somewhere else in the United States where we can learn the lessons and just apply them ourselves to get the benefits of the blue zones. So I'm super excited about his lecture. He will be talking about what lessons we can learn from the Seventh-day Adventists to live longer and be healthier.
I love that. That's so important. In fact, Loma Linda, California is the only blue zone in the United States.
Yes.
Can you tell us the other 4 blue zones that have been identified?
Another one is Sardinia, and then Okinawa in Japan, and one more, Lisa.
Ikaria, Greece?
Yes.
And
so that might be surprising to some people, right?
Nicoya Bay, Costa Rica.
Yeah.
And what I think is unusual when you look at these places, they're different races, they're different religions, they're different cultures. But there are lots of unifying threads. But the most predominant, what would you say the most common unifying threads are, Dr. Kahleova?
So it's a predominantly plant-based diet and physically active lifestyle, and also an emphasis on community, social life in the community. It seems like we're not only individuals, we are a part of society. And if we work together, we can achieve much more.
Exactly. And they eat a lot of beans. They eat a lot of legumes. So some researchers have said that one of the unifying threads is the consumption of legumes, that is a nutrient of longevity. In fact, I think they sometimes eat as many as 3 servings a day. And when I talk to people about it, I like to say, well, it's not refried beans 3 times a day. It may be tofu. It may be a soy product, edamame, or tempeh. And that's a legume because that's soybeans. It could be lentils. And certainly in the Mediterranean countries, Ikaria, Greece, and Sardinia, you'll see lots of lentils. And then if you look at Nicoya Bay, Costa Rica, they're eating probably various types of beans. So and then peas are also. So legumes include beans, peas, and lentils. So 3 servings a day. And people still say to me, well, what does that mean? What does that look like? Well, a tofu scramble for breakfast, some lentil soup for lunch, and a bean burrito bowl for dinner. And then you're not eating the same thing over and over again, but it tastes and feels very different. So I think that's really an important message. I can't wait for the meeting. And then if you can just elaborate a little bit about what you're going to talk about as well, because you touched on that before. You're going to talk about the study.
Yeah, I'll be talking about the best diet for weight loss. So I'll be sharing the results from the VegMed study, comparing a vegan and a Mediterranean diet. And we will be exploring the health benefits of both, and then see what the results show from the whole study.
That's wonderful. Let's talk a little bit about some of the speakers. This is just a small handful of speakers. And I see Dr. Kim Williams on the left. He is the outgoing president of the American College of Cardiology. He is the African-American man on the left. And next to him is one of my favorite surgeons in the world. That's Dr. Christy Funk, and she was show number 2 for me on Hey Doc, What's New in Plant-Based Medicine. And she is just a pistol. She's got so much energy, and she really does integrate antioxidants and the kinds of food choices that we can make to prevent cancer, and if one has cancer, make that cancer a little more survivable. Now, she's not saying she's curing cancer with a plant-based diet, but she's saying that when you flood the body with antioxidants, you can see different outcomes. And then who else do we have there? Dr. Michael Greger from nutritionfacts.org, Dr. Walter Willett from the Harvard MD, I think he's an MD. Is he a PhD also? He may be, from the School of Public Health at Harvard. And then we see Dr. David Katz, and then a brand new baby cardiologist who just finished her fellowship in cardiology, Dr. Danielle Bellardo. So it's going to be a great meeting. And that's just a small handful of all of the people that we're going to get to meet at this meeting. So I want to ask you, I want to close with your vegan story. Where I hear an accent, where do you come from? And how did you get involved in plant-based nutrition? What was the source? I'll let you just give us your plant-based story, because I think people want to know, how did you get involved in this?
Yeah, well, I come from Prague, the Czech Republic. If you haven't visited Prague yet, I encourage you to do it. It's one of the most beautiful cities in the world. It's called the Golden City, or the City of 100 Towers, and you will completely enjoy it when you visit. And when I was growing up, I grew up in a family on meat, potatoes, like pretty a standard diet. But when I was 14 years old, I was looking at the generation of my parents, and their friends were becoming more and more sick. Some of them have developed cardiovascular disease, some of them cancer and back pain. And I realized that health is a clear asset that you need to take care of. And I wanted to stay healthy, and I wanted to avoid all these diseases later on in life. So I set out on a journey and on, researching all the possible ways how to prevent all these diseases. And that's how I came across vegan diets being the most effective way what you can do for your health. And I became vegan when I was 14 years old. And it was pretty tough, actually.
That's very unusual for a 14-year-old, because usually the 14-year-olds are going vegan for animals. So to take ownership of your future health at 14 is really extraordinary.
Yeah, but my parents were super concerned about me going vegan. They were concerned about the potential health risks of a vegan diet. So it took a while, and they were trying to persuade me and talk me out of it. And then my mom eventually said, well, fine, do your vegan diet, but you need to cook for yourself. And she thought that was it, right? And in fact, that was just the beginning. Like, the beginnings were tough, Lisa. When I first cooked millet, the whole family was laughing at me. they were discussing which animal would actually eat it, because I didn't know what to do with it. I just cooked millet, but I wasn't, I didn't know what to do with it, how to make it taste. So
That's very funny.
And nowadays, millet recipes are one of my specialties and one of my favorites. So if you visit, Lisa, I'll do some millet for you.
I would love that. I would love that. That's wonderful. So you just learned to cook, and necessity became the mother of invention.
Yeah.
And then, how did you decide to go to medical school? Was this the motivation to become a physician?
Absolutely. When I experienced the benefits of a plant-based diet, I felt like this is revolutionary. This is something that could help so many people, and that inspired me to go into medical school.
And what did you do your PhD in?
It's in diabetes and nutrition. So during my residency, my heart was really going out to people with diabetes because I saw the dietary advice being actually the opposite of what would benefit them. People were, the recommendations were just to restrict their carbohydrates. And mostly people were left up with meat and cheese and all the animal products in an attempt to avoid carbohydrates, which were making their disease even worse. So my heart was really going out to these people with diabetes, and that's why I decided to change this. And I did a study with a plant-based diet for people with diabetes, where we showed that a plant-based diet actually can address all the underlying causes of diabetes. It can not only make your diabetes a little bit better, it can address the underlying causes, improve the oxidative stress, which is one of the drivers of insulin resistance and beta cell failure. It can improve your insulin resistance. It can even improve your beta cell function. It can improve the secretion of insulin. So all of these mechanisms can be improved through a plant-based diet.
And is that why type 1 diabetics sometimes can use less insulin?
Yeah, exactly. The mechanisms that are involved are the same in both types of diabetes, but type 1 has more deficiency in insulin than type 2. But all the mechanisms are the same. So if we are able to reduce the insulin resistance, it helps also people with type 1 diabetes.
And of course, it sometimes can even cure type 2 in some situations. Is that your belief?
Absolutely. And it's just super inspiring to see people dropping off their medications and getting their life back after decades sometimes of following the traditional diabetic diet.
When I teach the Food for Life classes, the first thing that I do in the class, because I don't know what their medical history is, I don't know who's on medication for hypertension or for cholesterol or for diabetes, but I always talk about the signs and symptoms of hypoglycemia and hypotension, because if they're on the same medication and then they begin this diet, they're very quickly going to become over-medicated. So of course I would never touch their drugs. My recommendation is to send them back to their primary physician with a log, with a document that shows the trend of what their blood sugars and blood pressures have been. And that really compels their healthcare provider to modify their dose and to begin to wean them off. And for some physicians, they've never seen anything like this in the world. Like, what kind of diet are you on? Who's that person who's telling you to do this? And it's pretty amazing. So for everybody out there in social media land, it works. It really works. And Dr. Barnard has written several books on preventing and reversing diabetes. And anybody can just go onto Amazon and put in Neal, Neal Barnard, Barnard, and see all the incredible books that he's written. I think he's now on his 20th book. And I'm bringing this up now because I'm so excited to say my guest next week is the one, the only Dr. Neil Barnard. He's going to be on my show next Friday. So I'm really excited. So I want everybody to please join in. Please tune in and tell everybody so you can watch it. And let's just take a quick look at some of the comments. I'll see. I haven't had a chance to look at this. I'm getting a lot of hellos. Let's see if anybody has an interesting question. Susan Song wants to know if pureeing beans reduces the fiber content.
No, it doesn't. The fiber content will be the same. You disrupt the fiber structure a little bit by pureeing them, but it's not so substantial. You disrupt the fiber also when you're making a smoothie, for example, but you don't need to worry about it. It's okay.
But it's still there. Yes.
Exactly.
It's still there. Okay, that's the only question I think I see right now as I'm looking through here.
And Susan is sharing that it reversed her type 2 diabetes. Congratulations.
Yes, she did. It reversed her type 2 diabetes. In fact, we talked about that. We met at the last conference in Washington, D.C. We talked about that, and I suggested that she give up oil and do a couple other things. And then she contacted me recently and said her hemoglobin A1C was 5.4. She was no longer in the pre-diabetes category. She dropped down into the normal category and is continuing to follow that. So I'm really excited for her. I hope I didn't reveal anything too personal, but it really did work.
Yeah,
it really did work.
Linda is asking, what about oils?
Yeah.
For your metabolism, for your weight control and the risk of diabetes, it's really important to keep the oils low. So what we recommend to our participants in the research studies is to completely exclude the oils from cooking when you are preparing meals at home. You can saute your onions in vegetable broth or soy sauce, and you'll discover that you don't really need the oils. So keep the fat content super low. We recommend that the fat intake shouldn't exceed 20 to 30 grams per day.
Yes. And what percentage of calories would that turn up to be?
About 10% of calories.
10%. Okay. Now, David Tenenbaum is saying, my friend David Tenenbaum is saying, an opinion on natto, whether it modulates the immune system to minimize a cytokine storm. Do you know anything about that? Natto is a fermented soybean that they eat in the Japanese kitchen.
Right. I'm not aware of any particular research that would show that this particular kind of soybean would be more effective than any other. But, generally speaking, all plant foods are rich in antioxidants and they help with inflammation. Some of them are higher in antioxidants, but I'm not aware of any research on this particular kind of soybeans.
What I know about natto is it's actually a source of vitamin K2. Mm-hmm. It has a very interesting taste and texture that you have to grow to like, but it is one of the few sources of vitamin K2 in the diet. And let's see, you see anything else? Thoughts on omega-3 and omega-6 supplements?
Yeah, supplements are not needed, generally speaking, to get more of the fats. So what happens if you keep your fat content of the diet low, you actually increase the percentage of omega-3s that you're consuming. So that's the beautiful part of it. And you don't need to consume any supplements. If you want to bump it up a little bit, just add a little bit of flaxseed, and that's it. You don't need any pills.
And there's a controversy of whether people are able to elongate those essential fatty acids if they are consuming flaxseed. Do you think are most people able to elongate their I think it's ALA to DHA or EPA and DHA. Are they able to do that, or do they need? Are there ever situations where they need an algae-based DHA or EPA supplement?
So many of the benefits come from ALA directly. So you don't need to worry about being able, like only a small percentage is being elongated, but that doesn't matter. Many of the benefits are coming from ALA directly.
Not to worry about it.
Yes.
Well, that's good. That's wonderful. All right. Well, Dr. Kahleova, it's been just a pleasure having you here, here on Hey Doc, What's New in Plant-Based Medicine. Thank you so much for all your time. This isn't easy. You have to put together the slides. There's a lot of back and forth to work this all up. And I know you're such a busy researcher. I really appreciate all the time that you spent before we even got to showtime today. But thank you so much for being here. I look forward to seeing you online virtually at the International Conference on Nutrition and Medicine. I will put that link into the comments so people can see that. And I want to thank you so much. Is there anything you want to ask me or anything else, any final comments you'd like to make?
Well, this was a fun hour, and I hope everyone enjoyed what we've shared. And check out the ICNM conference. Check out the speakers. It's easier than ever this year to register for the conference, and take the advantage of the virtual conference this year. So check it out and see if you find it helpful. Well, thanks so much, Lisa, for walking us through this show today. It's been a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to seeing you soon at the conference.
Thank you so much. And everybody that's watching, please share the video. And if you comment on our page, that's always helpful. So for people that haven't commented, it really helps the algorithm. So commenting and sharing and liking is all really good. And if anybody has any suggestions, I want to hear them as well. Next week, Dr. Neil Barnard, and I'm going to sign off right now. Thank you, Dr. Kahleova, and I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye, everybody. It's been a pleasure. I'm Lisa Carlin, your host for Hey Doc, What's New in Plant-Based Medicine. Bye-bye.
Bye.